we are going to talk about whether or not spec sheets are useless.
All right. Let's go.
So this is in your wheelhouse as a sales guy. So, so about a month ago, I hinted that I was going to get a Flip 4, as you know. Ended up not getting a Flip 4. Ended up instead getting an S23 Plus. So I stayed Samsung. No regret with that yet. Anyway, so I want to talk about my experience in buying that phone, and I'm not going to talk about why I didn't pick the Flip 4. For anyone who wants to know why I didn't go with the Flip 4, you can read about it on gktechpros.com. I wrote just an article on that. But I want to talk about the S23 Plus that I got. And you could lump the S23 into this conversation as well. Not so much the Ultra, because the Ultra, in my opinion, is not an S23 at all. It's a Note.
Fair.
So if it looks like a Note, it's got an S Pen like a Note.
Quacks like a Note.
Quacks like a Note. It's Note. I don't know what to tell you, Samsung. Not fooling me. It's a Note. Anyway, so it wasn't like out of the blue that I decided to get the S23 Plus. I'm usually the type of person who does a fair bit of research, and so I'll look at the tech list, the spec list. I'll look at reviews and then kind of base my decision off of that. But let me tell you about how frustrated I was trying to get good information from various sources on the S23 Plus. So you've had a total pendulum swing on the S23 Plus as far as its reception. So the phone launched in February, or mid-February, I think, or maybe early February.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been about a month. Now the specifications of it has been around a little bit longer than that. So 6 weeks maybe. So if you go back to the launch and right before the launch, the reaction to the launch of the S23 lineup outside of the Ultra is lukewarm at best, but really quite negative. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that the S22 wasn't that great of a phone. The S22 and the S22 Plus. I think they're good-looking phones, but people were not super impressed with that. And so when the spec list came out for the S23 Plus and the S23, people are just like, oh, it's just a refresh of the S22, which is a terrible phone. So you're a terrible person. If you get this phone, you need to get yourself a Pixel Pro or a Pixel 7 Pro. And so there were two videos that really got under my skin as I'm trying to gather information on this phone. One person had basically just read off of the spec list and was like, this is going to be a terrible phone. If you need a small phone, the S23 might be a good phone, but there's no compelling reason to get an S23 Plus because there's only a $200 difference between it and the Ultra. You might as well just get the Ultra. And, that's kind of fair. Unless you don't want an Ultra, right? Because the form factor it's not comfy to hold. You have no reason to use an S Pen. And you don't have any interest.
200 megapixels.
You don't need a 200 megapixel camera. I personally very rarely need to blow up a picture to the size of a small building
And make another picture.
also, I'm not a lunar photographer. And so I'm not interested in. I think taking pictures of the moon is great. Now I hear that when Samsung does it, it's fake. It's a lot of things being thrown at Samsung right now. This video is not to defend Samsung really. It's going to come out that way, but I don't have a lot of love for Samsung. But anyway, but this guy could not come up with a compelling reason to get the S23 Plus because all he did was look at a spec list. He never actually touched the phone or interact with the phone.
It's kind of a problem.
A little bit, right? But I mean, so these two videos that I saw, they're not prominent like YouTubers, not like big channels, but big enough. We're talking tens of thousands of subscribers to over 100,000 subscribers on these guys' channels, so they're getting thousands upon thousands of views. But anyway, so this one guy is like, I don't see a compelling reason to get this phone. I haven't touched it, but you probably shouldn't get it. And I can't think of a compelling reason to get this phone. The other video really irked me, really bad. And because he basically, like, the title of the video is like, don't buy an S23.
I wonder what he's going to talk about.
So it's like the title of the video is "Don't buy an S23," and then like the tagline is "Get a Pixel 7 Pro." And the dude again has not touched the phone at all, the S23 or the S23 Plus or the Ultra at this point. He hasn't touched any of them. But goes on to absolutely shit on these phones. Total takes a dump on them. Is like, there's, it's $1,000. The S23 Plus is $1,000 phone. It's gonna suck because the S22 sucked, and the Pixel 7 Pro is this great phone. It's awesome, and it's everything that this Samsung is not going to be. And that was probably the most vocal. The thing that really irked me about this one, though, he goes on for 20 minutes on why the Pixel 7 is a better phone, why you should not get an S23 Plus. And then at the very end, he's like, oh, by the way, in the description is my affiliate link to pre-order the S23. So, now, I'm not against affiliate links. Go get your money. Now, we don't have any affiliate links, at least not yet, on our YouTube channel. But if we do, it's going to be for products that we've actually used and believe in. There's something that just doesn't feel right about taking a total dump on a product and then showing people where to get it.
It's a little bit odd, at least.
And then profiting off of it.
Huh.
Yeah. And so the whole the entirety of that video just made me feel dirty. But anyway, so the thing with spec sheets is, it gives you the specifications of phones, so you can compare phone A to phone B to phone C. In fact, I did that. I went to GSM Arena because it's a pretty prominent site that you can go to get, this kind of information. And so I compared a couple of phones, and then I'm going to make a couple of points here because ultimately none of this actually matters. But, I compared the S23 Plus to the Pixel 7 Pro because this guy thinks that it's the greatest phone ever. Take everything that I'm going to say with a huge grain of salt because I'm a Pixel hater. So, have not been ashamed of that. That's not something that I'm trying to hide behind. And my hatred towards Pixel is the fact that Google makes that it has the stock Android system, which if you've used, know is superior to just about every other, Pixel, mutilated version that other OEMs put on their phones. But then Google puts it on crap parts. Anyway, let's get into some of this comparison, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on any of this because I know you're a little bit more knowledgeable than I am, specifically on Samsung phones. let's start with the display because that's a big thing, a big difference. I put the OnePlus 11 in here as a comparison as well because I think those three flagship phones are within the same kind of price range and are directly competing with each other. So on the display, the S23 Plus it's 120 hertz, but it's only a 1080p screen. Versus the Pixel 7 Pro's QHD, so it's a 2K screen. Same with the OnePlus 11. All of them are running Android 13. Of course, you have One UI with the Samsung, which I believe is inferior to the other two, which is just regular Android 13 on your Pixel and Oxygen OS 13 on the OnePlus. So the other, the Samsung has 8 gigs of RAM. The other two are in 8, 12, and 16 gig variants you can get depending on the ones that you want to get. The SSD storage speed is it.
I think you can get a 12 on the
Ultra. You can.
Okay, is it the 512 gigabyte? I guess is the 12.
So on the S23 and S23 Plus, right. whether you get the 512 or the 256, it's 8 gigs of RAM.
Okay.
But on the Ultra, it's 12 gigs. But again, we're not talking about the Ultra. We're just talking about the S23 and the S23 Plus. You do get faster memory as far as the SSD speeds. UFS 4.0 with the Samsung versus 3.1 on the Pixel. And depending on which memory variant you get with the OnePlus, it's either 3.1 or 4.0. The camera systems between the three phones are essentially the same. You could argue that Pixel offers better camera experience, and I wouldn't disagree with that. But as far as like the camera technology that itself, they're pretty on par with each other. Though you can with the Pixel, you can record 4K at faster FPSs or more FPS. The processor, this is where things get really interesting. So Google uses the Tensor chip. The OnePlus and the Samsung are using the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 chips, which are awesome. It's for the first time it's a chip that's throwing some true competitive juices at Apple, because Apple's just kind of known for being super powerful with their processors. But the Gen 2 is something else. All right, let's get down into the battery. So the S23 Plus has a 4,700 milliamp hour battery. That is smaller than both the OnePlus and the Pixel, which are both 5,000 milliamp hour batteries. But based off of this information, if you look at the Samsung, right, it's the more expensive phone. Its MSRP is $999, $100 more than the Pixel 7 Pro, and I think $300 more than the OnePlus 11. And so it looks really unimpressive, right? Because you're looking at the specs, and the specs don't say that the phone's really any better than these other competitors. But let's dive a little bit deeper into this. So GSM Arena doesn't just give you the test sheets; they also test these phones too, right? So they put up benchmarks against each other, right? So they run GFX Bench, they run Geekbench, they run Antutu, plus they do a battery test. And if you look at those, the S23 Plus slaughters the other two. Just it's a bloodbath in just about every test. So on the GFX Bench, which is like your GPU, so your graphics processing, if you want to do like gaming, and it averages your frames per second. The S23 Plus landed at 110 frames per second. The Pixel is at 34, and higher is better.
Wow.
The OnePlus at 57. Now, again, this all doesn't matter, right? My point here is none of this matters, because the other two phones, not the Samsung, the other two phones have QHD screens. That's more pixel density. That's more information that needs to be sent to the screens, which is drawing more resources. That's why you're getting better FPS on a 1080p screen. Just like if you're a PC gamer and you're going and you want a FPS boost, you go from a 4K resolution down to 1440p or 1440p down to 1080p to get that frames per second boost. So you're seeing 110 frames per second and it looks great, but it's doing that on a 1080p screen. But it still slaughters the competition. Geekbench score and Antutu are the same kind of thing. This is more CPU intensive, and these scores are nearly double what the Pixel 7 Pro can do. Then, of course, with battery life, the phone with the smaller battery is the one that's getting better battery life than the other two. Again, a lot of that's going to have to do with the fact that it's powering a 1080p screen and not a 1440p screen. But it's not close. It's a little bit close between the OnePlus, but the Pixel is in a bloodbath when it comes to performance. And so this is kind of what I'm getting at with this guy going on about how the Pixel 7 Pro is this great phone and how the 23 is just a crap phone, even though he hasn't interacted with the 23 at all, is when you compare the Pixel 7 Pro, not even to the Samsung, but to other phones that are in its class, the S23 Ultra, even when you compare it to other phones like my old OnePlus, the 7T Pro, in a lot of these like Geekbench tests, it beats the 7T Pro, but barely, and that's a 3.5-year-old phone at this point. So the Pixel 7 Pro ultimately, compared to other flagships, even compared to other flagships that are several $100s cheaper like the OnePlus 11, it's a slower phone. It's a phone with bad battery life. It's a phone that doesn't charge as fast. Again, if we go back to battery, it does up to 23 watts wired. That's like half what the Samsung can do.
45.
Right, so the Samsung can do 45. The OnePlus does 80, and if you live internationally, it does 100. In every technical kind of specification, and technically, the Pixel 7 Pro is one of the worst value buys that is out there, and you probably shouldn't buy one. Except that none of this actually matters again, because ultimately it comes down to what the experience is going to be and what you're looking for on a phone, right? But you're not getting that information until 2 weeks after the Samsung 23 launch, when finally you get all the real tech people who are actually testing these phones. They're actually living with these phones for an extended amount of time. Now the reviews of the S23 lineup is getting very positive because the chip, the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2, is not just powerful, it's super efficient. And the one thing that I've noticed in my over 2 weeks now that I've owned the Samsung, I have it right here, is the battery life on this is incredible. And it's fast. And it's so fast, I don't notice the Samsung and T-Mobile bloatware that's on it. I still don't like Samsung UI, but this phone is incredibly fast. I'm not a Samsung shill. I'm not paid by Samsung to say any of this stuff. A lot of people might say that, they might look at other YouTubers and be like, oh, that guy's just, they're getting paid by Samsung because Samsung sent them a phone or whatever. Samsung didn't send this to me. I've been critical of Samsung on this channel before, but I'm telling you that this phone is an underdog. And if you want a compelling reason to get it, for the one guy who couldn't find a compelling reason to buy it, clearly gaming, because I think Samsung unintentionally created maybe the best gaming phone that you can get. Only the Red Magic 8 Pro is outscoring this device in most bench tests right now. So, yeah. And so 2 weeks after launch, we're just now getting reviews in. And everything's been very positive on the S23 line. And this just kind of adds to the frustration too. It seems like there's so much places that you can get information, and you need to know what's good information, what's not good information. Does the spec sheet actually matter? My argument is no, because the Samsung S23 Plus does not look that great on the spec sheet, but it's turning out to be a very good phone. Probably the best phone that Samsung has put out in a while. But the spec list doesn't show you that. You have to actually interact with the phone to get that impression from it. And then things like MSRP, when you compare MSRP, it's even then it's hard to really compare because there's so many deals,
Right.
Like nobody's actually going out and buying this phone. If you're going out and spending $1,000 on this phone, you're probably doing it wrong. There's so many different deals, trade-ins, adding a line, different carriers are doing different things. And it's the same case with the Pixel as well. It's the same case, well, not really the same case with OnePlus, but even going off of MSRP, like you don't actually get a good impression of a device until you get to actually use it for a little bit, or actually walk into like a Best Buy and play with it a little bit. Because I'll tell you that even though this is a 1080p screen, it looks better than the screen that's on the Pixel. That's what my eyes tell me. I get that it's a lower resolution, but it operates better than the one that's on the Pixel. It looks better. It's, to me, it's smoother. Again, I'm not a fan of Pixel. But even compared to my iPhone, I have an iPhone 13 Pro Max. I like the screen that's on the Samsung better, despite the fact that it's lower resolution. So compared to the iPhone, I think it's actually nicer to look at versus the iPhone, which is...
Now we know you're telling the truth.
Now you know. Now you know.
We know you're not a Pixel fan, but
yeah,
anyone that's listened to you knows you're an iPhone fan. So
I'm an iPhone fan. I want to be a OnePlus fan. I love the 7T Pro. That's a phone that was really let down by T-Mobile and by OnePlus as far as support. So weirdly enough, Samsung has started to support its phones better when it comes to the software side. The biggest reason why I left Samsung, to begin with, this is the first Samsung that I've owned, and I've been rocking daily since the S4. And the reason for that is, the phone would be great for about 6 months. And then you get like an update for it, and then the phone would start to bog down. And by the time, in that process just kind of continues. And by the time you hit like the 2-year mark of ownership, you're a generation behind when it comes to the version of Android that you're actually running, and the phone is running super slow. And I'm throwing that device at the carrier saying, give me something new and something else. My contract is up. Because I can't stand this device anymore. And the reason why I keep staying with Apple is Apple's never given me that experience ever. They support their devices, like 6 generations in. So you can get 2 or 3 years into an iPhone device, and the thing still works like it's new, because Apple does a great job at supporting it on the software side. And so I've never been like so eager to trade in my iPhone for the next iPhone. I've always been like, well, do I need to trade it in? No. Do I want better battery life from a new iPhone and a cool feature? Yeah. So then I end up, trading it in when I'm ready to trade it in. The only time I've ever been super eager to trade in an iPhone was when I rocked a 10S. I downgraded kind of from a plus device phone to a regular sized phone because I wanted something that would fit my pocket better. And that was a massive mistake because I got that phone. Little did I know that in like 6 months, and my job would completely change, and I would hire this guy named Brandon and a whole host of other guys that were going to be in vans, and my day would start at 6 o'clock in the morning and would end at midnight. And I've had to charge my 10S twice, that day, from like 20% up to 100% to get me through the day, right? That gets really irritating, man. That's become so important to me now when it comes to phones. Like battery life is like the only thing that's like super important to me. Like I need two things. I need it to be fast, and I need to have all day battery. And by all day, I don't mean like a 8-hour workday battery. I need it to last from the moment I'm waking up in the morning to when I go to bed at night. Maybe it's a little bit of PTSD from my past job. You can vouch for that. You and I had a lot of conversations at 10 o'clock at night. So, I probably had more things to talk about with that. So, but you're on the sales side, and you know some Samsung stuff, but you don't have to respond to the Samsung stuff that I'm saying. What do you see as far as getting good information? Is there a way that this can change?
Yeah, I mean, I think the eye test I'm with you on that. We have such a plethora of information and information sources. So I think this is the kind of the existential struggle we have right now. It's too much information, and so I think you're right. I mean, I don't have the experience that you have with the S23 Plus, so I'm kind of listening to you, and it's very interesting. But there does come a point in which you just have to have things pass the eye test, and so yeah. I don't know what else to say specifically about whether it be Samsung or whatnot, but it's interesting to hear you talk about that.
Yeah,
I don't know what the solution is necessarily.
I don't know if there is a solution, and unfortunately, everything is going to online only. Right, retail is dying. T-Mobile wants to close all of its stores,
and then it intensifies that problem, right?
Right,
to be able to get my eyes on something and experience it. There's value to that.
And so it's going to, in the future, like the only thing that you're going to be able to do is walk into a Best Buy and get the Best Buy experience, which is a whole other video that I could do that I'm not gonna. But the thing is I've been crapping on Google this video, right? And so I've come to Samsung's defense, and it's made me sick to my stomach. I've crapped on Google, which makes me feel better, but at the end of the day, and again with the eye test is, I think One UI is inferior for people who are already Pixel users. They're not going to like the S23 Plus, even though I think technically, on a technical level, it's a superior phone because the experience
don't get me started on Pixel users. I don't get it. If you're a Pixel user, could you give me a rational argument? Because I don't understand them. I've had days where it's like there's Stockholm syndrome, like you can't reason with them. I don't know what it is, but Anyways,
I think it's stock Android.
I guess, but
well, so my biggest frustration with the S23 Plus, it's not a perfect phone. My biggest frustration with it is One UI. It's and coming from Oxygen OS to One UI,
yeah,
they're
right.
both Android devices, and yet why does the Samsung feel alien at times?
Right.
Even Google applications behave differently. Not even third party, just Google. My Gmail app on the Samsung behaves differently than the Gmail application on my Oxygen OS,
Right.
on my OnePlus. That, and it's been infuriating going through that learning curve.
Yeah, but it's more infuriating when you have, the same phone year after year fail with the Pixel. I've got people coming in, buying Pixel after Pixel. They'll buy the same exact Pixel that just pooped out on them, and it's incredible. I mean, we could talk for a long time about the Pixel failures,
Yeah, well, right, because we worked for a place that was contracted to do repairs with Google for the Pixel devices. So yeah, we could. There's a reason why I didn't consider a Pixel 7. I boiled my decision down to, once I decided not to go with the Flip 4, it was either going to be the S23 Plus or a OnePlus 11. But the Pixel fandom is a lot like Apple fandom, except that Apple historically has much longer longevity than your Pixel device does. And you are right. It is absolutely mind-boggling how many times, especially like the Pixel 4 XL and its battery to motherboard.
Yeah.
How many people went through that repair multiple times on that same device, multiple times, and just stuck it out, and then was like, well, I guess this is my reason to get a Pixel 5.
Yeah.
And me being like, I get that you have your Android lovers and your iOS lovers, right? And I wouldn't want to try to convert one to the other, because once you get so ingrained in one system versus another, it's hard to make that
switch.
It's hard to make that switch over. But on the Android side, man, there were so many times where your Google person would they're just like, the only Android device that exists are other Pixel devices, and so they're just going to go and get another Pixel device, and I'm just like, I don't understand. I don't understand that logic.
But you weren't there to deal with the 5A stuff, so
nope.
I don't think, anyways. Yeah. Anyways,
that's the one where Google started replacing the screens, because
they paid for even if it's broken
ones
physically,
because they assume that they're the ones that prompted the customer to get so mad to break their own screen.
I think we're actually, it's kind of interesting. We're kind of arguing against our main original point here in this video, which was the eye test. So basically, we're saying the eye test is important, except for if you're a Pixel user.
So, but I don't want to tell Pixel people that they're wrong, because so I understand why,
right,
stock Android, when I've used a Pixel device and it's worked properly, the stock Android is better than One UI for sure.
I keep hearing Stockholm every time you say
Stockholm.
Stockholm.
That's appropriate. That's Pixel users have Stockholm syndrome.
Right.
They've been abducted by Google and presented with stock Android, and they were forced into it, and now they just love it. I don't know. It's just this is nothing but a rant video about my frustration, and I don't have a solution for any of this. Because if you go online and you watch, a lot of these videos are going to tell you that the Pixel 7 Pro is great, and for a lot of users, they think that the 7 Pro is great. And who am I to say that it's to differ from them, right? Especially because I don't own a Pixel 7 Pro. I have no intention of owning a Pixel 7 Pro. If Google sent me a Pixel 7 Pro, I probably would send it back without testing it. That's not true. I'd probably test it and then send it back. But that overall experience that you get from, the Android skin, it makes a difference. I did not have any expectation when I first got the OnePlus 7T Pro. I didn't have any kind of expectation of it because there's a reason why I kept on going back to Apple, and it's because my experience with Android has been largely the same, kind of regardless of which brand I've gotten before. But the 7 Pro changed that for me. Not the Pixel 7 Pro, the 7T Pro from OnePlus. The Oxygen OS was by far the most superior version of Android that I've used, and it's not close. And it still is, because One UI 13 is not that great. So it's it's just I don't know what to do because spec sheets aren't going to tell you the whole story, and benchmarks aren't going to tell you the whole story, and if you want to pick the right device for you, all of a sudden you need to be an expert. And I haven't even gone over, the repair side of making decisions like this either, right?
That. Yeah, we have a lot to say about that too.
Right, and did that factor into my decision? Absolutely, it did.
Oh yeah.
Because fixing a Samsung is fairly easy. The device is made very modularly, and
even
Samsung
easier
puts
now.
even easier now, and Pixels, Pixel lure, if you have an A series, or I think, I don't know if the 7 series is the same where everything is through the front. If you want to replace the screen on it,
yeah,
I think it is.
Yep.
And even that repair lures
challenging,
right?
Yeah.
I'm just thinking of the adhesive for Google, right? And getting screens back on, just like the adhesive, it can be overwhelmingly challenging to do versus doing like a Samsung phone. It's and I'm much more confident without actually dunking the phones into water, that if I do a screen replacement on my S23 Plus versus doing a Pixel screen replacement, that I'm much more confident of getting water resistancy back on the S phone than I am on a Pixel device, because the Samsung is just way more easier handling the adhesives and replacing the adhesives on it.
iPhone, and I think iPhone's probably the best for that. The water resistant.
I would agree with.
Yeah, on the screen, they're pretty.
On the screen itself, yeah. If you do the Samsungs and you're going in through the back and you're doing a frame replacement, a screen with the frame, I would say it's easier and better with the adhesive on the back glass being the adhesive that needs to be replaced versus the screen on an iPhone. But I'm much more confident in replacing especially components beyond the screen. I'm way more confident in the replacement parts with the Samsung
than any other device,
including Apple.
Yep.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know if we're going to get into this. We could probably talk a lot about repair, but the Pixel 7, or the Pixel devices in general. Yeah. That's
I didn't mean for this video to get into why I hate pixel repair.
Yeah, we're talking about information, and there's a lot to consider.
Right.
And so, yeah, how do you get that information? It's an important question. There's a lot to consider especially, and it's not a small purchase either. So it's not like we're making something, making a lot out of something little. It's a big purchase for people. So it's one of those. It's I would say comparable to buying a car, maybe even more so. People might spend more on a phone than a car sometimes.
People tend to hold on to their phones for at least 2 years. 2 to 3 years seems to be when people tend to trade up their device.
Right.
So when they're making a phone decision, they're committing to something for 2 to 3 years. Right. And smartphones now are basically an appendage to your body for a lot of people.
Yep.
And so it's a very large commitment. And I don't have an answer. Maybe someone is going to listen to this and they're going to have a better answer.
I would love to hear it if some people have some good ideas. I also, you can go ahead and link for us. You had at least one link for us, right? What was it, the GSM?
Yeah, GSM Arena.
You can link that for us since you mentioned it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you can compare those 3 phones. Yeah, I think the OnePlus 11 is pretty compelling. It's good to see OnePlus head into that direction that they were heading originally. I thought that they had peaked at the 7 Pro, the 17 and the 7, just the 7 lineup for them. The 11 is, the 11's running the same processor. It's got super fast charging. It's got good battery life. But they did something that I think is kind of silly. So they got rid of wireless charging. So like the previous 2 generations or maybe 3 generations of the OnePlus phones had wireless charging. And so this generation, OnePlus was like, you know what? Nope. We're going to make the phone a little bit cheaper, so we're gonna get rid of wireless charging, but we're going to add Wi-Fi 7. And who's using Wi-Fi 7? Is anybody using Wi-Fi 7 right now? Wi-Fi 6 is becoming the new standard. 6E is out now. That's what I have in my house at the moment. Which is nice on the Samsung, which has 6E. So I'm getting gigabit Wi-Fi speeds on the Samsung. I don't need that fast, but I get them, which is nice. I like running the test, the speed test for that just to see it. But I could go into Amazon right now, type in Wi-Fi 7 router, and nothing pops up. It's all Wi-Fi 6 stuff. Who's using Wi-Fi 7? And in OnePlus, did you have to put in Wi-Fi 7? And why would you pick Wi-Fi 7 over wireless charging?
This is it. The OnePlus users it's for time travelers. So
time travelers.
So perfect. that's their target.
That's their target
consumer,
right? So that I didn't even think of that. I didn't even.
You're welcome.
This whole video is for naught. I was assuming that Pixel and Samsung and OnePlus were going after the same market. They're not. They're not. OnePlus is going after time travelers. Pixel's going after Stockholm Syndrome survivors. Samsung is going after lunar photographers. That leaves iPhone for everyone else. So I had this all wrong. This is all wrong.
There's a lot more werewolves than I thought out there, though. You wouldn't. I hear a lot of people coming in that are all of a sudden interested in moonshots. I didn't realize how many people were into that, but there's a lot of them.
So what I'm going to do is, it came out today that maybe Samsung has been faking lunar photos. Anyway, but I did, for shits and giggles, decide to take a picture of the moon about a week ago. So I was inside my house and I looked up through a skylight and I saw the moon and I was like, I'll just go ahead and take a photo with the S23 Plus. And the photo was actually really impressive. And then I did the same thing with the iPhone, and the iPhone was laughable. And I'll probably just post both photos up on this video. So for anyone who's lasted this long, and it's been a long time on this video, for anyone who wants a kick, especially a kick to the nuts to Apple and their lunar photography ability. The two photos are the difference is just laughable between the two. One, you can make out that it's the moon that I took a picture of. The other one, you have no idea. But I swear I stood in the exact same. I had both phones on me. I stood in the exact same spot, looked up through the skylight, and maybe that's the problem. Is I took the picture through a skylight, so there's a bit of a reflection that you can see in the iPhone photo, but you don't get any of that at all with the Samsung photo. Part of me thinks with the information that I saw today about Samsung just not actually taking a photo of the moon when you think it is, it's just uploading a shot of the moon instead. I might believe that, because I thought it seemed really like almost too good to believe, the picture that I took with the S23 Plus. I took a picture of the moon. Well, the thing is like you put it up to the moon, it recognizes that it's the moon, zoomed all the way in, took a photo, and it shows me the photo, and I get some pretty impressive detail of the moon out of it. But I'm just like, it guides you as you're looking at the moon. It kind of guides you to take the optimal photo of it, which I thought was pretty cool.
It's got some AI in it.
Yeah. So it's but from what I'm hearing today, they're just saying that Google is faking moonshots, and that they're just uploading images of the moon to the phone instead of actually taking a picture of the moon when you think it is. I don't know, but anyway, I'll put both photos up just so people can laugh. I laughed. I showed my wife and she laughed. She's an iPhone person, but she laughed. Yeah. That's all I got. I don't want to rant anymore. This is a rant video. Maybe I'll just put that as the title. Samsung rant.
Well,
lunar photos rant. And poopy pixels.
I think it's easy to start ranting when you don't have a good solution, and that's where we're at.
That's the frustration. If I had a solution, I'd go ahead and just propose the solution, right? But I don't have a good solution, right? Because I'd like to offer the solution, right, and then make money off of the solution. And be like, yeah, we'll just take all the phones and we'll do testing just like GSM Arena, and then we'll give you an honest feedback on it, right? But again, that doesn't give everyone all the information that they need, and I think no matter what, if you're a Pixel person, you're just not going to like the Samsung phones. It's just, One UI and stock Android are just too different, and you're just not going to like it. And if you like phones that last long and don't have problems, you're not going to like Pixel phones. I don't know what to tell you. And if Google would watch some of this is my feedback to you. It's you offer such a great operating system. Usually, it can be buggy at times, but
come on, Google, you're not Jesus riding in on a donkey. So that's not what's happening here.
Right. You're right. You're not Jesus walking in on a donkey. And how dare you sell Pixel 7 Pros and say it's a $900 phone with the garbage hardware that you put on it? Right? Google used to be like, hey, look, we offer a flash experience for half the cost. No, not anymore. You don't. Like, your phones are expensive now.
Yeah.
With crap hardware. Now, no excuse. No excuse. I don't know what to do. I don't know. We can end it here.
Sounds good.
All right. We'll just...
Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching. Insert catchphrase.